1, 2, 3.
¡Ay, ay, ay! Gracias a Chuck. No hay paycheck. ¡Órale, mi gente! Government vacaciones. Se cayó la Casa Blanca. The doors are all locked down. Gracias a los demócratas. No money goes around. Customs sin tamales. The bags are full of trash. Chuck Schumer su bigote. Se acabó el cash. El Schumer shutdown. Ay, caramba, qué horror. Workers sin sueldo. But Congress drinks more. El Schumer shutdown. Tequila we pour. We broke en la casa. Pero fiesta. For sure. How giant. Ay, Dios mío. Social Security. La abuelita. ¿Dónde es my money? But Chuck is dancing with Nancy, playing piñata con economy. El border's like a fiesta, with maracas and no wall. But if you need a paycheck, pues no viene at all. Option de Chacal! El Schumer shutdown. Mariachi tonight. The lights in el Capitol still shining bright. El Schumer shutdown. Qué loco país. No hay checks para la gente. But plenty for DC. Señor presidente, no tenemos dinero. We still got cerveza. El Schumer shutdown. Gracias, Chuck. Ole. We laugh with the trumpets, but bills we can pay. El Schumer shutdown.
Beautiful job. Beautiful job. Beautiful job. That is the best one. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I am your host, Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Lawgic. A lot of you wondering, what's Joe doing? Why, it's like there's daylight out. I thought he was a vampire or something. Like, how is he coming? Like, how is he not like bursting into flames like Spike waking up in the middle of a park? No, you see tonight, just like 4 hours from now, we start the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, which is actually sort of kind of like a 9-day holiday with 5 intermediary days. For the first 2 days and the last 2 days, we're not able to it's kind of like effectively for social media purposes, it's like the Sabbath. So I am not going to be streaming tonight. I will not be streaming tomorrow night. I will be back, God willing, on Wednesday night with a late show. That's going to be a late show on Wednesday night. So that's the schedule. And I was like, I can't. I didn't. I wasn't here. I wasn't able to make it in here Saturday night or Sunday. I was like, I can't not do a show for like a freaking week. That's crazy. That's crazy. I get like, I start getting antsy. Like, no, give me a camera. I'm going up to strangers, grabbing their phones. Give me your camera. It's ugly. It's not good. So we're here. We're live. We're doing this show now. I hope if you're catching this afterwards, you can still give the like, the thumbs up. Brian Oldenkamp jumping on in here with 10. Count them. 10 new members of the following. God bless you, Brian. Yes, it's not any reason not to work for me. This is what work is. This is work. This is work. Anyhow, the 10 new members of the following. Who'd you bring on into the following here? I should check that out. The following 10 people brought into the following, which is not at all a cult type of cult, courtesy of legendary Brian Oldenkamp. That would include Caitlin W., Julius Vizzi, what the heck? Superstar? Is that what that is? I think it's Superstar. That's a font I ain't seen before. I ain't never seen that one, Superstar. She must be. CC Reagan, Terry, Moon Safari, James the Jimbo, Just Dawn, Victor Man, Jules OMN, probably Minnesota. Welcome to Follower Status. You are now a follower. You might say, wait, if I'm a follower, who's the leader? I am not at all the leader of the following. Not that there's anything to be embarrassed about, because the following is not a cult type of cult. It's just a gathering of like-minded individuals who are looking for greater personal growth through community, unity, learning and thinking. So, yes, thank you. As always, you're awesome. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. The two main topics I really want to cover tonight, the first one's one I'm going to spend the most time on, is really about this amazing new program which Trump is trying to kickstart. He's trying to kickstart and came out on October 1st. So we're a couple days behind on it, but there's just I don't cover it now, and I think it's significant, and I think this could be a game changer, and in some ways has potential to actually be long term, the most impactful thing that Trump ever does. That's how significant this is. It has the potential to be long term, the most impactful thing that Trump ever does. So certainly with respect to education, and arguably, when you consider the impact, when you consider the impact as to what can happen here, it's actually something that has massive impact. I see that Brian Ogden here, just to let you all know, is trying to push us towards the goal. I do have a goal. If we have 15 yellows, I'm going to do a show next Monday afternoon also. I'm sort of feeling out whether or not people like the Monday show. People like the Monday afternoon show. So I will do one next Monday afternoon if we reach our goal, which is 15 yellows. That's $10 or higher. 15 yellows. Then I'll do a show next Monday. And also, awesome Nana News. Hit me up. Hit me up with 5 new members of the following. I want to get back into the show, but the following 5 people should express their gratitude to Nananos for bringing them on into the following. That would include Bam Bam, Unhyphenated, Rachel Hope, Brinson Engelhart, Greg Warrener. Hey, how you doing, Greg? And Sherry Reed. Welcome to the following. It's not your parents' type of cult. Trust me on that. Okay, so where was we? I wanted to talk to you about this situation here, which was first reported by the Wall Street Journal. I believe they were the first ones on it. So we're going to go to them. At least everyone keeps referencing them. We're going to go to them, and then we're going to look at the actual compact itself, which is 10 pages. And we're going to look through what it is exactly that he's trying to get from these different universities. And what it's referring to here is that 9 schools, White House asked colleges to sign sweeping agreements to get a funding advantage. Ooh, I like it. You can use the carrot. You can use the stick. This is the carrot. When he pulls funding from Harvard, that's considered the stick. You're smacking that donkey, saying, "Move, jackass." That's what the stick is. Over here is trying to feed these jackasses money to get them to go, get them going where you want them to go. 9 initial schools are invited to join compact banning use of race or sex in admissions, freezing tuition. That's a nice thing also here, right? Freezing tuition and capping international enrollment and more. He's trying to incentivize recreating these universities in Trump's own image, which you have to like, right? I mean, this is what we need. The Trump administration is laying out a set of operating principles that it wants universities to agree to in exchange for preferential access to federal funding. The expansive 10-point memo, dubbed the Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education, puts forth a wide-ranging set of terms the administration says are intended to elevate university standards and performance. Universities that sign on will get multiple positive benefits. That's your carrot, including substantial, meaningful federal grants, according to a letter addressed to university letters. Our hope is that a lot of schools see that this is highly reasonable, said May Melman, a senior advisor for special projects to the White House. The memo demands that school ban the use of race or sex in hiring and admissions, which, by the way, that's not even asking them to do anything other than comply with the law. Just comply with the law, because the law says you're not allowed to use race or sex in your hiring or your admissions. So it's sad that we have to offer a carrot to get people to comply with the law, but that is the reality. Freeze tuitions for 5 years. Okay. Cap international undergrad enrollment at 15%. Cap internet. So that, which is, in other words, let's make our American education system for Americans, require that applicants take the SAT or similar test. I didn't even know they weren't requiring that. What? I thought everyone had to take that. And quell grade inflation. I'm not even sure what grade inflation is, unless it's a way of basically, it's like giving like DEI grades. Maybe there is something like grade inflation like that. I never even heard of that. That's kind of horrifying. Much of the document focuses on campus political climate. The compact asks universities to ensure a vibrant marketplace of ideas on campus and to bar employees from expressing political views on behalf of their employer unless the matter affects the school. It seeks to create a more welcoming environment for conservatives, asking colleges to make governance changes and abolish departments that purposefully punish, belittle, or even spark violence against conservative ideas. Quote, institutions of higher education are free to develop models and values other than those in the memo if the institute elects to forego federal benefits, the document says. So you don't have to do it, but if you comply with the compact, we're going to give you heap big money for you. Now, I would imagine it would have to be heap big money because these colleges take in a lot of money. They're not going to be swayed by $100,000. They're not even going to be swayed by $1 million. This is probably heap big money. Ted Mitchell, president of the American Council on Education, which represents more than 1,500 presidents of colleges and universities, said he found the idea of compact troubling, particularly its points regarding political expression and views. What you should find troubling is just how ridiculously tilted it is currently. The environment is currently. He's trying to level the playing field, obviously. Everyone knows it. You could pretend it's not the case. But when you have a staff which 95% of their donations, if not more, go to the Democratic Party, you have a problem there. You're not actually trying to present you're not trying to present a balanced perspective. You're trying to propagandize. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to basically have your students come out of there with a particular perspective. That's not education. That's propaganda. Education is helping your students learn to think for themselves. And that seems to be almost to a lot of these universities, they look at it like that's the Antichrist. Like, oh my God, they might think for themselves. What are we going to do now? So he's trying to get universities back to what universities were meant to be. Who decides if the intellectual, this is still Ted Mitchell, who's not happy about this carrot. Like, how's it harming you? Well, why is it bothering you? It's just added money. It's not like he's taking money away. Why is it bothering you? Who decides if intellectual environment is vigorous and open-ended? This is not something the federal government should be involved in and adjudicating, he said. The implications of free speech are horrifying. It's not horrifying. He's not taking money away from you. If you want to tell me that you're bothered by what he did to Harvard, I can understand that. That's where your claim might have at least some sort of grounding to it. But over here, where they're just saying, okay, keep doing what you're doing, or here's an incentive program to do things a different way. It is horrifying that, like, maybe we'll have actual diversity of thought rather than just diversity of DNA. On Wednesday night, the White House sent letters inviting an initial round of 9 universities to sign on to the agreement. The letter explains that signing on, quote, will signal to students, parents, and contributors that learning and equality are university priorities, and the federal government would have assurance that the schools are complying with civil rights laws and pursuing federal priorities with vigor. In an interview, Mailman is the guy he seems to be spearheading this project on behalf of the government. He said the purpose is to push schools to lead in things that are not hard decisions, but they are hard to go at it alone, such as steadying tuition rises. Mailman has been driving the White House efforts to crack down on schools over concerns about anti-Semitism and diversity initiatives. I'm gonna go into this in a lot more detail. Actually, let me just pull up like who got the letters first. Letters on Wednesday were going out to solicit agreements and feedback from Vanderbilt, Dartmouth, U of P, University of Southern California, MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, University of Texas at Austin, University of Arizona, Brown University, and the University of Virginia. Notice these are states outside California. Well, this is actually a pretty broad array of states of universities that are situated in both red and blue states. I'd be curious to ask Mailman what made them come up with specifically these 9 universities. Like, what about them did you think that was it based on the fact that you thought the problem was most significant there, or that you thought that they need funding more, or you think that they're more amenable towards change? Like, I'm curious what the thinking was. I have no reason to think that any of these universities should be specifically included or excluded, but you would think that if you're sending out letters specifically to 9, there has to be some sort of guidance as to what led you to pick these particular universities to extend the invitation to first. The schools either declined to comment or didn't respond to requests for comment. The White House chose the schools because they believe they could be good actors. Well, I guess that's it. I guess that's it. I guess if it was, we think these schools are hard up for money, he wouldn't say that anyway, right? He's not going to say that. We think they are or could be good actors. So in other words, these are not the schools who are so far off the cliff that they're basically, bastions of Antifa. With the dean of Antifa. The dean of Antifa, which some of these schools seem to have. You see we saw what happened in Stanford. I was explaining to my children this past Shabbos. I had the unique blessing, and we're gonna be looking at the compact specifically in a moment after I get through super chats. But I had the unique blessing of having all of my offspring by my house for the weekend. So, which counting my daughter-in-law and sons-in-law as children, God bless, meant 5 sons, 4 daughters, and 5 grandsons. Kind of how. So, yeah, it was. So I was talking to them. The reason I brought this up was because I know my personal life isn't really of that. No one cares much about that. But the point is, I was talking to them about how I worry for their generation. And I explained to them something that I covered in a show here over a year ago, I think, at this point. Over a year ago. I said, this is what I told them. I said, I want you to understand why I worry for your generation. I said, and I can't even speak to like my grandkids' generation. What I told them is law schools are ranked. If I ask you to name the top law school in the country, most of you, like what's the highest ranked law school in the country, most of you would assume most people who haven't looked at it ever before would assume it's Harvard. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Harvard. Obviously, it's like the top school in the country. That's what everyone thinks. It's not. It's not Harvard. It's actually Yale, and it has been Yale for a very long time. In fact, Harvard is not number 2. Number 2 is Stanford. That is the number 2 law school in the country. So I think Harvard is ranked number 3. So I said, so let's understand, so you can understand those are the top 3 schools. Yale, Stanford, Harvard. I think Columbia is like number 4. I haven't looked at the rankings anytime recently. I said, now understand this. I want you to understand how much prestige certain judges have. You know that there's 9 Supreme Court justices in the entire country, and they are held as like, you know, the highest regard. If they go into a law school, obviously everyone's like, oh my God, this justice is here visiting. We have 94 courts and something like fewer than 500 judges in the district courts. 94 federal courts and fewer than I think that's the number. It sounds very low. That sounds very, very low. 2,500. Anyway, the point I was getting at was this. There's only 13 circuit courts. If you're a circuit court judge, that is pretty freaking prestigious. Any university or law school would be thrilled to be addressed by a circuit court judge. They are not a dime a dozen type of individual. There's a circuit court judge, I think from the 5th Circuit, which this story happened like a year and a half ago. He went to Stanford Law School, the number 2 law school in the entire country, to address them about a particular topic. He was invited to come down there and speak. He came down there to speak. And when he got up there, they were shrieking and screaming at him because they didn't like some of his decisions, that they felt he was too much of being pro-life or other issues that they didn't like. They literally would not let this man speak. He is, like I said, there's only a handful of people relative to the population in the country who have the legal prestige of this gentleman, and they're shrieking like lunatics so that he can't get a word out. So you hear that's what's happening in the number 2 law school in the country, and you should be horrified. This is like, because these are the people who are going to be justices. These are the people who are going to be politicians. These are the people who are going to be leaders of the country. But it's even worse than that. It's even worse than that. And the reason it's even worse than that is because when they were shrieking and there was this entire commotion that was going on there, that the students, you know, early to mid-20s, most of them, future leaders of the country. Like I said, number 2 law school in the country. Future leaders of the free world. And when they have someone of such prestige come into them, they cannot listen to him and have to act like little infants screaming, whatever, and shutting him down because they can't tolerate his presence in the room. And what makes this story much, much more horrifying than it already is that they had a dean come in who heard the commotion. And instead of yelling at these students as to what the F is wrong with you, in front of the entire class, lectured the judge of asking, why would you come here when you know how much is going to aggravate these people? Why would you do that? I have to ask you, the phrase she uses, is the juice worth the squeeze? Which I'm sure she was very pleased with that. She happened to be the dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which the idea that there's a dean of that is another horrifying thing. I said to my kids, I said, these are the future leaders of your generation. They're being taught to shriek down anyone who they disagree with, silence them, shut them up, and just basically, I'm not listening to you, and act like a bunch of lunatics. And they're not even chastised. If anything, they are further encouraged to do that more by these clowns who call themselves educators, who call themselves professors, intellectuals. They're enabled and emboldened, and no, not even that, practically encouraged to do that more and more. That is what the future leadership of America looks like. Because these people will be the leaders of the free world 20 years from now. And that's why correcting the education system is of such utmost importance. Correcting the culture in these education in these schools of higher learning is of critical importance. It was always bad. It was always left-leaning. But now, because the left has become so tilted that they it's not just that they think a certain way, but they don't even they try and silence opposition. It used to be they think a certain way and they would argue and disagree with the other side. Now that it's a matter of silencing and shutting down everyone they disagree with, that's what changing that culture is arguably the most significant improvement that Trump can make to America. Yes, I agree. What was that? Oh, I don't know what that was. There we go. Yes, I agree that getting rid of shackles on our problems with our elections it's incredibly important. Yes, I agree that remedying the problem with the illegal aliens, incredibly important. Our economy situation long term, incredibly important. Changing what America is going to look and sound like, changing how the dialogue will be exchanged in America, pushing these schools into actually having fairness. It was something that this culture is desperate for. And that's why this compact has potential to be so utterly significant. That's why it's so important. That's why it's so big. But I want to look at the compact with you. So I do think we should see exactly what steps he's looking to take. And this ultimately would be cementing Charlie Kirk's legacy, because Charlie Kirk was all about free speech, all about competition of ideas, the marketplace of ideas. All of these things are essential. Adrian says, Joe, it's time to confess. What did you do to Josh Allen? The squirrels are not happy with you, sir. I'd be careful walking under the trees if I were you. Just saying. Most of you are probably confused. In my Good Lawgic Fantasy Football League, I played Adrian this week. And she was actually favored going into the Monday night game. She had 3 players going to the Monday night game. One of them was Josh Allen. What Adrian did not even realize is that I was in every other league besides this one. She grabbed Josh Allen in front of me in this league. In every other league, I had Josh Allen. So I was very, very torn about what to root for. And I actually said to myself, perfect would probably be around 20 points. I need points from him to win in one of my other leagues. Because I'm going against Travis Etienne and Kelsey. And I was like, I need 20 points out of him. But 25 points would be lethal. And he's been getting 25 points pretty consistently. And he ended up finishing almost exactly 20 points, which was 3 points too few for Adrian's concern, because I ended up beating her by 3 points. So sorry. I knew it was going to be a battle the whole way through, down to the very last play of the game. Very last play of the game. I had no idea if I was going to win, because if he completes that of Keon Coleman, I'm done. Thomas Dietrich saying, welcome to the afternoon. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that. We should take a look at the compact. Should take a look at it. I'm checking on the ghetto, making sure I'm not missing anything here, which I'm not. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Did I create? I didn't open up. I should open up. I'm going to open up the locals playground for my diggers. My diggers playground is open. Let's look at this compact, because I think this compact is pretty well written from what I've seen. Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education. This is the compact that Trump is hoping to get these schools to agree to. It's 10 pages. So we're going to zip on through this. American higher education is the envy of the world and represents a key strategic benefit for our nation. In turn, the U.S. university system, let's get my little underline. The U.S. university system benefits in a variety of ways from its extraordinary relationship with the U.S. government. These include access to student loans. Oh, that's an interesting way of doing that. Grant programs, federal contracts, funding for research directly or indirectly, approval of student and other visas in connection with university matriculation and instruction, and preferential treatment under the tax code. So Starts off with, we kind of cover you guys a lot. We help you guys in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of things we do. We get loans for your students, which honestly, if they cut all the loans to students, it's political suicide, but the price of tuition would come crashing down. Funding for research directly or indirectly. That's like, we give you money for your research. We get you your visas. We give you preferential treatment under the tax code. To advance the national interest arising out of a unique relationship, this Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education represents the priorities of the U.S. government and its engagements with universities that benefit from the relationship. So you got all these different benefits from the relationship. This is what we're looking for from you. Institutions of higher education are free to develop models and values other than those below if the institution elects to forego federal benefits. So we're giving you all these benefits. There is veiled in here, I will say this. There is veiled in this first paragraph. What's veiled in here is, if you don't go along with it, we don't have to give you all those benefits like access to student loans, visas. We don't have to. It's not something we must give. And frankly, between you and me, I do think that might be the long-term strategy here. It's like, oh, okay. Well, you don't really want to go along with it? You don't want to sign the compact? When do your visas get approved? Oh, you don't want to? Not sure we're going to give you access to student loans because you're not an institute of higher education. You're a propaganda machine. They shouldn't have all these things. Why should they? Why should they have access to any of these? Would you give it to some propaganda machine for Russia that was situated here, or for Islam, or for Israel? Something that's, would you say, oh, okay, we should give you special government benefits because you're propagandizing on behalf of a foreign nation? How insane would that sound? If you want to set that up on your own dime, okay, but that we're going to have the government funding you, the government giving you special tax breaks. That doesn't sound logical. Equality in admissions, discriminatory admissions processes reflect a fundamental misunderstanding not only of civil rights law and the U.S. Constitution, but of the damaging impact such practices have on individuals and our nation as a whole, specifically the individuals who seem like they've benefited from it. Meaning, even if you're trying to help black people and say we take black people in there, when you're known for giving preferential treatment to black people, it just undersells the significance of their degree because everyone's like, well, you got it because you got preferential treatment. That's why you got it. So when they get into the job market, everyone assumes that they're lesser. If you know that someone has to be, I don't know what's happening with that light. Looks like it's going to be a fun one today. So if you know, think about this for a second. If you know that if you're of race A, that you have to be like the top of the top to get in there. That's getting annoying. But if you're from race B, you can be like pretty much, 3/4 as talented, half as talented, half as hardworking or as intelligent, and still get access. Now you need to have someone who can get a job done. Which race are you going to end up looking to hire from? Which one are you going to be incentivized? Say like, okay, this person had to be amazing to get in there, and that person didn't. So what ends up happening is now if you're a person from race B who is every bit as exceptional, if not more so than anyone from race A, everyone is looking at you and assume that you probably suck. So it ends up creating discrimination against the people you're trying to help from race B. It's just common sense. I mean, just think about it for a second. You're harming the very demographic you're aiming to help, you're purporting to help. Discriminatory admission, treating certain groups as categorically incapable of performing and therefore in need of preferential treatment perpetuates a dangerous badge of inferiority, destroys confidence, and does nothing to identify or solve the most pressing challenges for aspiring young people. You're just depressing the heck out of these poor folks. Therefore, No factor. Let's make this thicker. Maybe that'll make me happier. Anyway, no, that's not going to do it. We'll just leave it as this. Therefore, no factors such as sex, ethnicity. Oh, that's definitely not what we wanted to do there. Therefore, no factors such as sex, ethnicity, race, nationality, political views, sexual orientation, the gender identity, religious associations, or proxies for any of those factors shall be considered. Don't even think about it, whether explicitly or implicitly. This is the most liberal thing in the world. It's pathetic that these institutes of higher education are so in their own echo chambers that they don't realize that this is the liberal perspective. This is Dr. Martin Luther King right here. He would be championing Donald Trump, championing. And any decision related to undergraduate or graduate student admissions or financial support would do exceptions for institutions that are solely primarily comprised of students of specific sex or religious denominations. So you have some schools that are specifically an all-girls college, or might be for, a college for queers, or historically black colleges and universities. So those are solely or primarily comprised of students of specific sex. Now you want to make that's what your school is about. So, okay, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. University admissions decisions shall be based upon and evaluated against objective criteria. Remember when we used to have like objective standardized tests? Yeah. Published on university's website. Oh, and available to all prospective applicants and members of the public. That's what we want. It's not just that you're having integrity. We want transparency about your integrity. This way people know that you're actually working legitimately and you're not leaning on the scales one way or another. Institutions shall have all undergraduate applicants take a widely used standardized test, SAT, ACT, CLT, or program-specific measures of accomplishment in this case of music, art, and other specialized programs of study. Universities shall publicly report anonymized data for admitted and rejected students. So this way, if we see someone gets rejected when they have numbers that are greatly superior to someone else, we can understand that that person probably was targeted. Or if you see someone who has crappier scores, we don't need to know their name, and that's why it's good that they have it anonymized. I don't know why English is such a struggle for me today. That's why we have it anonymized, so no individual is going to be embarrassed. But this way we can basically see, hey, how are you stacking up these students, including GPA, standardized test score, or other program-specific measures of accomplishments by race, national origin, and sex. Marketplace, that's there's 10 points here. That was the first point. So first point is basically saying no more of your stupid inequality in your admissions. Number two is creating a marketplace of ideas and civil discourse. You can see that the timing of this is definitely tied into Charlie Kirk, right? I mean, that's truth-seeking is core function of institutions of higher education. Fulfilling this mission requires maintaining a vibrant marketplace of ideas where different views can be explored, debated, and challenged. If you join late, what we're looking at here is a proposal that the Trump administration gave to universities as a compact, an agreement that they would sign with the government, which would enable them to have access to additional funding and other federal benefits if they sign on to this compact, which I think is a wonderful idea and potentially can help start to remedy the deep flaws in the American education system, particularly of higher learning. Therefore, or higher learning, sadly, signatories to this compact commit themselves to fostering a vibrant marketplace of ideas on campus. A vibrant marketplace of ideas requires an intellectually open campus environment with a broad spectrum of ideological viewpoints present and no single ideology dominant, both along political and other relevant lines. Signatories commit themselves to revising governance structures as necessary to create such an environment. So you're going to actually take steps to try and make sure that your environment here is something that is healthy. Including not limited to transforming and abolishing institutional units that purposefully punish, belittle, or even spark violence against conservative ideas. So we're recognizing that conservative ideology has been under attack, and anything that you have that is sparking violence against conservative ideas, you're going to try and root that crap out. Given the importance of academic freedom to the marketplace of ideas, signatories shall adopt a policy protecting academic freedom in classrooms, teaching, research, and scholarship. Such policies also recognize that academic freedom is not absolute, and universities shall adopt policies that prevent discriminatory, threatening, harassing, and other behaviors that abridge the rights of other members of the university community. Academic freedom is not absolute, and universities shall adopt policies that prevent discriminatory, threatening. So I think this is probably about what was going on with the whole targeting of Jews in universities. So if you see that people are basically using this to try and engage in discriminatory and threatening ways, that you're going to try and stop that. Signatories commit to rigorous good faith empirical assessment of a broad spectrum of viewpoints among faculty, students, and staff. You see, this is something I don't know how they're going to do this. A broad spectrum of viewpoints among faculty? Really? I don't see that happening. At all levels, and to sharing the results of such assessments with the public, and to seek such a broad spectrum of viewpoints, not just in the university as a whole, but within every field, department, school, and teaching unit. So it'd be really fun to see all those conservatives teaching diversity, equity, and inclusion in the DEI department. Signatories, that's these signatories is a reference to the colleges that sign on to this compact, acknowledge that the freedom to debate requires conditions of civility. Civility includes protections against institutional punishment or individuals' harassment for one's views. Universities shall neither support nor permit a heckler's veto through, for example, disruptions, violence, intimidation, or vandalism. Universities shall be responsible for ensuring they do not knowingly permit actions by the university, university employees, university students, or individuals external to the university community to delay or disrupt class instruction or disrupt libraries or other traditional study locations. So we don't want to see you marching around here and basically harassing students because they don't agree with particular ideologies, and that the universities are going to insulate students who are being targeted by that. For example, Riley Gaines, that she spoke out against transgenderism in women's sports, and she was targeted by the school body, and they were harassing her in the halls, and she was like practically running for her life. The university does nothing. So they will also not knowingly allow demonstrators to heckle or accost individual students or groups of students, or allow obstruction of access to parts of campus based on a student's race, ethnicity, nationality, or religion. This is all should be basic stuff. It's pathetic that you have to incentivize to get them to do this. Am I wrong? I am curious if you guys think that this is something that any universities will sign on to. What percent? How many universities will sign on to? I'm assuming it's going to be offered to a lot more than the 9 that are this compact. Have 0, small handful. More than 10%. Let's assume it's offered to like 100. If offered to 100 schools. If offered to 100 schools, how many universities will sign on to this compact? This is our poll that's going up. 0, a small handful, more than 10%, or more than 33%. That's what I'm putting up there for you. As the in our poll. In our poll. I'll check the ghetto and you guys can tell me what. While universities should protect debate and academic freedom, harassment falls outside permissible bounds. Signatories shall adopt policies prohibiting incitement to violence, including calls for murder or genocide or support for entities designated by the U.S. government as terrorist organizations. This is specifically tying into the fact that Antifa has now been labeled a terrorist organization. So you're not going to be supporting Antifa anymore. You're not going to be supporting Hamas anymore. All signatories shall adopt policies consistent with legal requirements, including those of the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. The university shall impartially and vigorously enforce all rights and restrictions it adopts with respect to free speech and expression. Non-discrimination in faculty and administrative hiring. Oh, this is what they're referencing here in that number, in that footnote number 1, where it said that allow restriction to access parts of campus based on students' race or ethnicity. And they say, as one federal judge recently noted in disbelief, in the year 2024, in the United States of America, in the state of California, in the city of Los Angeles, Jewish students were excluded from portions of the UCLA campus because they refused to denounce their faith. This fact is so unimaginable and so abhorrent to our constitutional guarantee of religious freedom that it bears repeating. Jewish students were excluded from portions of the UCLA campus because they refused to denounce their faith. UCLA does not dispute this. Instead, UCLA claims that it has no responsibility to protect the religious freedom of its Jewish students because the exclusion was engineered by third-party protesters. But under constitutional principles, UCLA may not allow services to some students when UCLA knows that other students are excluded on religious grounds, regardless of who engineered the exclusion. I didn't even know about this. That is crazy. Wow. That is unbelievable. These are the people who are saying that Trump and MAGA are Nazis. And they're literally saying, Jews, you have to denounce your faith. Unbelievable. It's astonishing. A steadfast commitment to rigorous and meritocratic, and I know that technically that Germans care about DNA more than they cared about the religious element to it. So fine, they're like the Greeks. A steadfast commitment to rigorous and meritocratic selection based on objective and measurable criteria in the appointment process is pivotal for the university to sustain excellence. Consistent with the requirements of Title VII and the Civil Rights Acts and other federal employment discrimination statutes, no factor such as sex, ethnicity, race, national origin, disability, or religion shall be considered in any decision related to the appointment, advancement, or reappointment of academic, administrative, or support staff. So no being biased against folks because they're conservative. It's really that simple. At any level except described in Section 9 or otherwise provided by Title VII or other federal employment discrimination statutes. Think about what they're doing here. Think about what they're demanding. They're calling for in this compact. It's crazy. It's crazy that this is something that in 2025 we need to be like financially incentivizing universities to do this. Like what an indictment of universities it is. The fact that this is needed. to have equality in admissions, to have a marketplace of ideas, to say you're and not basically allow allow groups to come onto your campus and engage in religious discrimination, to not discriminate against your faculty and who you hire and promote. It's pathetic. It's such a pathetic statement about American universities. Institutional neutrality. Signatories shall maintain institutional neutrality at all levels of their admission. This requires policies that all university employees in their capacity as university representatives will abstain from actions or speech relating to societal and political events, except in cases in which external events have a direct impact on the university. So all employees will abstain from political events. This is one I can see them saying, no, we want to have staff who are heads of the Green Party. I don't think they're gonna go along with this. This is the part I think they're gonna really fight with. Policies requiring institutional neutrality must apply with equal force to all universities' academic units, including colleges, faculties, schools, departments, programs, centers, and institutes. As the president of Dartmouth recently explained, consider a student interested in majoring in a certain subject. Upon going to the department homepage to discover course offerings, the student is slapped in the face with an official statement excoriating his own political ideology. How comfortable would that student feel taking a class in that department? Our principles of institutional restraint permit departments to issue public statements only in limited issues directly related to their academic expertise. So, if you're in politics, you're teaching political science, that's one thing. But if you're like basically an engineering, if you're teaching engineering, there's no reason you should be weighing in with politics to the students. Okay, I can understand that. I can understand that limitation. Rather than publishing these proclamations on their homepages, departments must create new web pages specifically dedicated to public statements and endorsements. This ensures that departments promote their academic missions, not their social political belief. So just teach the students the things that you're supposed to be teaching them. Don't start weighing in on every element of politics with them. Get back to teaching your damn course. Not everyone needs to know how you feel about everything. This is why they sent it to Dartmouth. This is why they think that Dartmouth, this is probably why they figured Dartmouth is a potential signee onto this. So like, this is if this is what the president of Dartmouth is putting out there, he obviously recognizes that neutrality is an institutional neutrality is a healthy thing for a university. All university members, including students, faculty, and staff, are encouraged to comment on current events in their individual capacities, provided they do not do so on behalf of the university. So you might feel a certain way, but don't say that this is what don't hold out the university as being like that. So that makes it a little bit more palatable. So if Mr. Johnson from the art department wants to go and speak at a pro-choice rally, he can do that in his individual capacity, but not as the head of the art department. Okay. That's because I can understand universities in good faith saying, I don't want to tell my faculty you can't be involved in politics. And the response from the government is, we're not saying you can't be involved in politics. They just can't be doing it as a representative of your school. Let them do it in their individual capacity, not putting on airs that like they have more significance because they're the head of your art department. Signatories can commit to great integrity and the use of defensible standards for whether students are achieving their goals, or with each grade reflecting the quality, breadth, and depth of the student's achievements. Okay. Signatories acknowledge that a grade must not be inflated or deflated from any non-academic inflation. This is the grade inflation and deflation that I was confused by. For any non-academic reason, but only rigorously reflect the demonstrated mastery of a subject that the grade purports to represent. Signatories will use public accountability mechanisms to demonstrate their commitment to grade integrity. I don't know how they would do that. Such as publishing grade distribution dashboards with multi-year trend lines. Public statements that explain student outcomes and any unusual upward trends and comparisons with peer institutions. Maybe this means that some of them are inflating their grades in order to make their students look smarter. This might not be a politics related thing. This might just be your grades are crap. So no way. No way. No way. Wow. Cool. Wow. 19 months. Time flies by. You know, Joe, here's a certain ace attorney who could have cracked this wide open. His name is Phoenix Wright. Never heard of him. Catherine K. 30 months. Joe, will you also be streaming later tonight? No, I will not. As I explained, tonight we commence, and I put the calendar in my community and also my YouTube community, and also have it pinned in locals as to when I am shut down because of Jewish holidays. So I can tell you right now, but people tend to forget. That's why I put it there where people can just look at the calendar for themselves. I will not be streaming tonight. I will not be streaming tomorrow night. Neither tonight nor tomorrow night. I will be streaming, God willing, late on Wednesday and on Thursday. Try to stream over the weekend. It's going to be very tough because there's a lot of family-centered things. And try to stream Saturday night and or Sunday. We'll see. Especially if there's anything particularly outrageous that happens in the news. But I will not be here tonight and tomorrow night. So this is like in lieu thereof. Peas and Butter says, do you know if this will only be available to higher learning universities or apply to private secondary schools? Also, money towards the goal of 15 yellow. We're getting close. We're moving towards the 15 yellow. 15 yellow means that what I have as a goal is if we hit 15 yellow, I am going to be streaming next Monday afternoon. Because your way of saying, Joe, we like this Monday afternoon stuff. So I don't know if this will be available to right now all we know is that it was shared with 9 universities. The 9 universities were listed. I actually had here. Al Jazeera gave this breakdown as to who it was. These are the 9 universities it was offered to. University of Arizona, Brown, Dartmouth. Dartmouth, we saw that the president of Dartmouth seems to be very bothered by a lack of neutrality. So MIT, University of Pennsylvania, University of USC, University of Texas, University of Virginia, and Vanderbilt. So those are the 9 universities who received this offer. But I expect it's going to be broadened out to a lot more. I'm curious what you guys, let me see how my poll is going. I'm curious what you guys think. Is that anyone's going to take this? You guys are not too optimistic. You're not too optimistic. Most of you. All right. We'll see. Probably depends how big those incentives are. Some of them may haggle also and say, all right, we'll do like 8 out of 10 of these, but 2 of these we can't comply with. What can you give me for that? What can you give me for the 8 out of 10? Student equality. Students shall be treated as individuals and on the basis of their immutable characteristics, with due exceptions for sex-based privacy, safety, and fairness. Women's equality requires single-sex spaces such as bathrooms and locker rooms and fair competition such as in sports. So this is fighting back against the woke trans agenda. Institutions commit to defending and otherwise interpreting male, female, women, and men according to the reproductive function and biological processes. Otherwise, immutable characteristics, particularly race, do not permit unequal treatment, including in grading, as well as access to building spaces, scholarships, programming, and other university resources. So, yeah, obviously we're not talking about, throwing your men in locker rooms, in women's locker rooms, but otherwise you're going to treat everyone the same. Student equality includes equality in discipline. Signatories shall maintain clear and consistent disciplinary standards that apply equally to all students, faculty, and staff. These standards should promote fairness, due process, and equal treatment, and should be administered in a manner consistent with institutional policies and applicable law. These standards shall never favor or disfavor any person because of his or her membership in a racial, ethnic, national, or religious group, or based on sex, sexual orientation, or gender orientation. So let's treat students like students and stop trying to categorize them based on their immutable characteristics. All of these things, none of these things are crazy at all. Financial responsibility. Too many young adults have been saddled with life-altering debt that has affected, among other things, their ability to have a family or purchase a home. Universities have a duty to control their costs, including by eliminating unnecessary administrative staff, reducing tuition burdens, engaging in transparent accounting and regular auditing for misuse of funds, and cutting unnecessary costs. Signatory acknowledge that universities that receive federal funds have a duty to reduce administrative costs as far as reasonably possible and streamline or eliminate academic programs that fail to serve students. I don't know how you would measure this. Towards this end, signatories in this compact commit to freezing effective tuition rates charged to American students for the next 5 years. Well, that's one way to do it. That's one way. No more tuition hikes. Further, universities poorly equip students when they fail to inform them about likely life earnings for students' chosen majors, or admit students without the skills or support needed to succeed. So bringing in someone where they're destined to fail at life, you're not doing them no favors. That's not helping anybody. Universities shall publicly post statistics about average earnings from graduates in each academic program, and shall refund tuition to students who drop out during the first academic term of their undergraduate studies. What? Refund tuition to students who drop out during the first academic term of their undergraduate studies? I don't know they're going to do that. I don't know they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to do that. Universities giving refunds? I don't think so. They'd be like, are you kidding me? So some clown signs up to our college, and I'm teaching him all year round, and he gets time to May, and he hasn't studied, he hasn't done anything, and he's an idiot, and now I gotta refund him his tuition. The guy's been getting high all year long, and now he drops out. I guess it's one term, it's not a full year. Signatories shall responsibly deploy their endowments to the public good. Any university with endowment exceeding $2 million per undergraduate student will not charge tuition for admitted students pursuing hard science programs, with exceptions as desired for families of substantial means. What? So if people are taking hard science programs, we want to encourage you to sort of push them along. If you're getting endowments exceeding $2 million per undergraduate, listen to these numbers. This gives you an idea as to just how many billions of dollars these schools are raking in. You're getting $2 million per student in endowments. Why are you charging tuition? What do you care? What do you care? Universities shall also make efforts to, I guess that's how you get them to refund. It's so crazy how much money these schools make. Universities also make efforts to expand professional opportunities for America's military service members and veterans. To that end, signatories shall commit to accepting full transfer credits from the joint service transcript of military service members and veterans, enrolling in undergraduate and graduate programs applying to general education course requirements, and, where relevant, major specific course requirements. So we're going to give credit to the joint service transcript of military service members. I like this. Let our vets, don't make our vets take the same courses over and over again. Foreign entanglements. All universities must comply with anti-money laundering, know your customer, and foreign gift disclosure obligations imposed by the federal government and other rules and regulations overseen by the United States Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control and Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, U.S. Department of Justice, and the U.S. Department of Education. This mandatory compliance is to assist the federal government in detecting, preventing, and eradicating criminal and terrorist financing and activity. By entering into this agreement, universities agree to take all necessary steps to comply with applicable anti-money laundering laws, know your customer laws, and related regulations and foreign gift and contract disclosure requirements. I think that there have been a few incidents. I'm not sure about this. I remember reading something about this, about how that certain terrorist organizations were funding universities and getting kickbacks or something like that, and basically using it for money laundering. So I think that's what this is intended to get them to commit to stop assisting in. All students, staff, and faculty must comply with Know Your Customer, KYC, and anti-money laundering laws. By entering into this agreement, universities agree to maintain an anti-money laundering and KYC program in accordance with the Bank Secrecy Act as amended by the U.S. Patriot Act and other applicable federal laws and regulations, including Section 117 of the Higher Education Act. Now, I'm going to tell you this. One of the elective courses I took in law school was banking law. This you should know, the Bank Secrecy Act is such a perversion of the words bank secrecy. It is such a perversion of that term. It's an interesting thing. I'm going to just side note here just to share like my astonishment when I learned about this when I was in law school. That was in Europe, most notably everyone is familiar with Switzerland. Bank Secrecy Act basically are laws that they have in the EU and in specific countries that prohibit banks from disclosing information of their customers, how much money they have in their accounts or things of that nature, that it's a law that they can go to jail if they disclose this information to anybody. That's bank secrecy in Europe. It's the only area I can think of off the top of my head where bank secrecy laws are superior to American law. In American law, Bank Secrecy Act is, in what scenarios are banks obligated by law to go running to the government and rat on their own customers? That's what they call bank secrecy. It's bank screaming laws. It's the Bank Screaming Act. When are banks supposed to come screaming to the government, hey, we see something here that we think you might want to have it pay attention to? It's the most ridiculous nomenclature imaginable that they call a Bank Secrecy Act. It's literally a perversion of the word secrecy. That's why if you make a deposit in $10,000 or more, you got to report it to the government, because that way they can sort of be like, where did Bethany get $10,000 from? Well, let's lock that away. So The program is reasonably designed to prevent university services from being used to facilitate money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities and to ensure transparency and public accountability, and it's also for taxes. Sorry, that's what the Bank Secrecy Act is, but this program is claiming that that's what it's about. The program includes the following: procedures to verify counterpart identification and retaining necessary identification and transactional information, designated compliance officer, suspicious activity reporting procedures, training and education of appropriate university personnel about what they have to do about what their role is going to be with respect to the program. Concerns regarding transactions that are unusually large or that appear suspicious and questions regarding money laundering in general should be directed to the university's Treasury Management Office. Federal permission for foreign student visas is intended to further America's national interest. Now, this is an area where I have disagreed with Trump's policy. It's one of the few areas I disagree with his policy. I would say this. It's like, no, we shouldn't be having more than like a few hundred international students coming into this country. Just no visas. I would be giving zero visa. Why? Like, we don't have enough Americans? He looks at it as importing talent. Were you assuming they're going to stay here? What makes you think they're not going back to the home country? And for all you know, taking what they learn and using it against us. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. But Trump disagrees with me on this. So, whenever someone asks me, someone accused me of being a Trump sycophant and saying, whatever he says, I go along with. I'm like, no, this is one area I really disagree with him on. I also think he spends too much money. Federal permission for foreign student visas is intended to further America's national interest to the extent that selected foreign students exhibit extraordinary talent and promise to make America strong and more economically productive. And the selected students are introduced to and supportive of American and Western values, ultimately increasing global understanding and appreciation for the United States and our way of life. Universities that rely on foreign students to fund their institutions risk, among other things, potentially reducing spots available to deserving American students. Yeah, that's what I've been saying. That's what I've been saying, Donald. And if not properly vetted, saturating the campus with noxious values such as anti-Semitism and other anti-American values, creating serious national risks. Therefore, no more than 15% of universities' undergraduate student population shall be participants in the student visa exchange program, and no more than 5% shall be from any one country. For schools presently over the 15% population, incoming matriculating classes should meet the 15% cap. So we're not going to make you get rid of students that you have, but you can't be taking in new students. Signatories pledge to select those foreign students on the basis of demonstrably extraordinary talent rather than on the basis of financial advantage. So don't give it to some rich Saudi prince. Give it to someone who's actually talented. And to screen out students who demonstrate hostility to the United States, its allies, or its values, and to provide instruction in American civics to all foreign students. Universities shall share all known information about foreign students, including discipline records, upon request, and as relevant with the Department of Homeland Security and Department of State. So if we get these illegal aliens, we're gonna people overstaying their visas, so we'll know about it. As a recipient of significant funding and other benefits from the U.S. government, all universities shall promptly and fully disclose all funding from any foreign institutions and individuals. So we're going to want you to open your books to us so we know just how much money you're getting from Qatar. No foreign funding may in any way encourage or restrict the hiring of any persons or the teaching of any particular perspective or the admissions of any foreign student or group of students. Failure to fully disclose all direct and indirect foreign funding shall be in violation of this compact. If you're unaware of this, in the 1970s when we had the oil crisis, and the Arab League was doing a phenomenal job of playing around with oil prices. They got that's when oil went from being something that was lucrative to something that was explosive, and they became much richer in the 70s. And one of the investments that they made was into the American university system. They started basically saying, we'll give you endowments of $5 million a year. And we want you to be teaching Islamic friendly perspectives and have like a department of, basically Muslim studies. And we'll tell you who the chair of the department should be. Like, we're going to designate who the chair of the department should be. And they were giving millions of dollars to universities all across the country every year. And that's those numbers only increased and increased over time. So many of these universities for the last several decades have been raking in collectively hundreds of, any one school has been taking in, hundreds of millions of dollars from the Middle East. They basically started getting rich off of us by creating the oil crisis, and then started using portions of that wealth for the purposes of re-educating Western values. To just be something that's more consistent, or at first more tolerant of Muslim perspective. And now basically, looking at it like without any eye of criticism, ask yourself this. Think about this for a second. If you think about how effective this has been. The woke ideology, which is something that is promoted so strongly with such vim and vigor in these universities. It's all about alternative gender, sexuality, all sorts of things that that Islam in particular has zero tolerance for. Zero tolerance. And you have all these university students who are so advanced and enlightened, and they understand that sex is not gender, and that person can be fluid, and all these different retarded things they come up with, which is, if they were in any of dozens of these Muslim-controlled countries, they would literally be killed for. And they're able to compartmentalize and basically saying that we're all about this, and about women's rights and all this other stuff, women's freedom, and that women can do whatever men can do. They're all about that, and being pro-Islam in ways that far deviate from American norm. There's these two opinions are so diametrically opposed to each other. It's astonishing that one person can hold both of these beliefs without his brain like just melting and leaking out of his ears. Now, some of them, you talk to them and you think that the whole brain melting and leaking out of their ears probably happened several decades earlier. But the reality is they're able to function and have a conversation, and they literally don't see the ridiculous hypocrisy when you see like Queers for Palestine, which is like, dude, if you were a queer in Palestine, you're dead. You wouldn't be. It's the stupidest thing in the world. It's the stupidest thing in the world. And how do they come to that? It's because this is what the colleges basically have been spending a lot of time in defending and promoting the values and virtues of Islam, while also promoting the values and virtues of this alternative lifestyle. Why did universities do this? Why are they so defensive about Islam? It's because they basically have been raking in hundreds of millions. They've been bribed into doing it. So. Exceptions. Notwithstanding the foregoing, a religious institution may maintain preferences for religious affiliation or belief in hiring and admissions. A single-sex institution may maintain sex-based preferences, and any institution may maintain preferences in admission for American citizens. Nothing in this agreement limits or displaces limited exemptions for bona fide occupational qualifications based on religion, national origin, and sex provided by Title IX. So this is all the standard exceptions that you always had. That's fine. Enforcement. How are we going to know that you're actually complying with this compact? The leadership of an academic institution is directly responsible for its strategy, success, and adherence to legal and government requirements. On an annual basis, the university's president, provost, and head of admission shall be required to certify the university's adherence to the principles contained herein. The university annually shall conduct or hire an external party to conduct an independent, good faith, empirically rigorous, and anonymous poll of its faculty, students, and staff, providing them the opportunity to evaluate the university's performance against this compact. So we're going to be testing you to make sure you're actually doing this, not just taking the word of the president or your head of admissions. The results of such surveys shall be made public and available on the university's website. Adherence to this agreement shall be subject to review by the DOJ. Universities found to have willfully or negligently violated this agreement shall lose access to the benefits of the agreement for a period of no less than 1 year. Subsequent violations of the agreement shall result in the loss of access benefits to the agreement for no less than 2 years. Further, upon termination of any violations, all monies advanced by the U.S. government during the year of any violation shall be returned to the U.S. government. So you're going to have to give us back your money. Finally, any private contributions to the university during the years in which such violation occurred shall be returned to the grantor. So you're going to have to give that money back because people are going to be giving you more money because they like you taking this. So you're going to have to give that money back. And there you go. There's really nothing that's crazy outrageous here. This is all things that they should have been doing forever. They never should have been deviating from this in the first place. It's kind of sad that they have to do this. But let's break down our poll and see where our poll is at here. Where's our poll at? All right. The poll question we have is, if offered to 100 schools, how many universities will sign on to this compact? The choices were 0, a small handful, more than 10%, or more than 33%. 53% of you said a small handful. That's right. And 26% say 0. You guys are such cynics. You're such cynics. 15% think more than 33%, more than a third of them will take it. And the loser in this was more than 10%, which only came in at 6. So there you go. Ms. Mo is enjoying Daytime Joe. Here's to more Monday afternoons. Thank you so much. Where are we at in that? We got a ways to go there. We got a ways to go there. GB says, afternoon, Joe. Good to see you in the afternoon. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Very much appreciate that. All right. We are in a new SCOTUS term. Chief Justice Roberts declared the new term open, and there's a bunch of cases which are coming down the pike. So I want to review with you where the Supreme Court is at, where we're going, what's going to happen, what they're going to be deciding. I'm not going to be weighing in during this stream how I anticipate them holding, but I'm going to talk to you about the significance, or my personal opinion as to the significance of certain cases versus others. We're going to not focus on everything they're taking, but we'll focus on ones that I expect that most of you will think. And this is an article I found in Reuters, which I was like, this is helpful. People should know what's coming, what's upcoming. So this is like a preview of where SCOTUS is going during the forthcoming term. U.S. Supreme Court starts new term with major Trump cases in store. U.S. Supreme Court began its new 9-month term on Monday. Major cases in store concerning presidential powers as Donald Trump probes the limits of his authority under the U.S. Constitution and federal law while turning away a high-profile appeal by Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. So you might recall that we're talking about how Ghislaine Maxwell was trying to get in there into the Supreme Court. And one of the issues with her case, which was denied. Let me see if I pull this up here. Oh, they just have summary. Okay. So Ghislaine Maxwell brought an appeal to the Supreme Court, and her lawyer's point was a relatively fair point, and it's an interesting question. The issue was, she was saying that she was carved out when Jeffrey Epstein got an immunity protection for himself in 2007. So he got it for himself and for anyone who was related, who was associated with him. Now, all the work that she did for Jeffrey Epstein was before 2007. So she was making a claim, hey, I have immunity. You can't charge me. Judge Nathan looked at previous decisions in the Second Circuit, and said that the Second Circuit holds that a promise of immunity from a prosecutor only binds that particular jurisdiction where the prosecutor is operating. So, since that immunity was granted in the Southern District of Florida, in New York, in the Second Circuit, they feel that only handcuffs Southern District of Florida, but any other prosecuting office can go after them. And that's why when cases brought in Southern District of New York, Southern District of New York is not bound by that. Now, there's a circuit split on this, and there's reasons to make a claim both ways. I actually think my personal opinion on that matter is, if you look at the law as what is logical, like, what power do you have? What authority and license do you have? Well, the Southern District of Florida, a prosecutor from that jurisdiction only has license to prosecute there. How can they promise away powers or rights or opportunities that someone else has? That's like me selling away your car for you. It's your car. You have those rights. You have the access to that. You have the opportunity to do that. How can I sign that away from you? So I think, now the question then is, do you look at them as if they're acting they are acting on behalf of the United States of America? So now you can say this representative of the United States of America, who happens to be from this jurisdiction, standing in for the United States of America, said, I'm granting this immunity. So once they grant the immunity, that should bind everyone who can now purport to act on behalf of the United States of America. The Second Circuit it's a circuit split. The Second Circuit said they are allowed to do that. It's the sort of case that I thought the Supreme Court might take, but apparently the Supreme Court has said, no, we're not taking that case. So we understand the circuit split as to whether or not a immunity that's granted in one jurisdiction is binding on a separate jurisdiction, but we're not going to hear it. Before hearing arguments in his first two cases of the term, the court rebuffed appeals on multiple cases. One of them was a bid by British socialite Maxwell to overturn a conviction for helping Epstein, the late financier and convicted sex offender, sexually abused teenage girls, as the justices steered clear of a case that continues to hound Trump and his administration. And it does still hound him. There's not nearly as vocal an element out there coming after him for it. But I'm sure that Trump was probably happy to not have that popping up in the news. I'm also equally sure the Supreme Court doesn't give a damn what makes Trump happy. They've made that clear time and again. The justices also rejected Missouri's appeal to revive a Republican-backed law intended to prevent enforcement of several federal gun laws in the state. So, and bid by the conservative activist group Project Veritas to invalidate unconstitutional free speech grounds an Oregon law that generally bans unannounced recordings of conversations. I was unfamiliar with this particular case, but apparently Oregon passed a law saying you're not allowed to secretly record a conversation. And obviously Project Veritas is like, what do you mean? That's like basically how you do any sort of investigative journalism, is you're going to have to secretly record people. That's what they do. Apparently, when they tried getting to the Supreme Court to get that approval, the Supreme Court said, we're not taking it. Chief Justice John Roberts, who has now served the post for 2 decades, said before arguments commenced in the first case that, quote, I have the honor to announce that the new term is now convened. The court takes up its first big case of the term on Tuesday in a dispute over the legality of a Colorado law that bans conversion therapy. The most astonishing thing about me is intended to change a minor's sexual orientation or gender identity. I cannot believe there's a law in Colorado specifically, which is a very liberal state, which is banning conversion therapy. I can't even believe it. I'm so baffled by this. Oh, wait. Oh, they're banning converting someone who's gay into not being gay. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, now I understand. U.S. Supreme Court agreed on Monday to hear a Christian therapist challenge on free speech grounds to a Democrat-backed Colorado law banning conversion therapy intended to change a minor's sexual orientation or gender identity. So they're saying if the kid is gay, you can't make him non-gay. The state claims it's regulating professional conduct, not speech. Oh, so that's an interesting conversation. Okay, that makes a lot more sense to me. This is one of a passel of cases touching on hot-button U.S. cultural war issues, with others due to be argued for focusing on transgender student athletes, gun rights, and race. But the major theme of the term promises to be the authority of president in cases involving Trump, who returned to office in January. The court, whose 6-3 conservative majority includes 3 justices appointed by Trump. Ooh, they always go with Trump, right, Amy Coney Barrett? During his first term in office, already has backed the Republican president in a series of cases decided on an emergency basis this year. I think they're like 60-0. I think they're like 60-0. And the one case this year involving Trump in which justices heard arguments, the conservative majority handed him a major victory. It's the conservative majority. I hate you, Reuters. You suck. That buttressed presidential powers. In this case, which arose from a dispute over Trump's efforts to limit birthright citizenship, the court in June restricted the ability of judges to impede his policies nationwide. That's right. That's right. On the emergency basis, at least, they went with Trump, saying, "Yeah, birthright, you can restrict birthright citizenship. Sure. There's no automatic birthright citizenship." The court has, and in fact, you guys shouldn't be trying to stop his nationwide policies. The court has arguments coming in November, December, and January, 3 big cases involving Trump over the legality of his sweeping tariffs and his moves to fire officials from agencies set up by Congress with certain job protections meant to insulate them from presidential interference. I will say this, on the tariff thing, I actually think he probably has, I like the tariffs. I do. I think he probably has legal jeopardy there. I think he's gonna struggle with that one. I really do. I think that's where he's constitutionally and very weak. He's relatively in treading in weak waters. I don't like the way the Constitution is structured in this particular issue, but that is what the Constitution says. You sort of have to go with what these people wrote. So I can disagree with the principles of what I don't agree with everything written in the Constitution, and this is an area where they delegate that authority to Congress, and I'm just like, why? Why would that be something? Especially if it's something that someone like Trump can like haggle with them, and his role is to deal with foreign governments. He's the tip of the spear for that. The latter 2 cases are challenges to his actions to oust Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook and Federal Trade Commissioner member Rebecca Slaughter. I do think he's going to win on those, on the ability to fire people. I think he's going to win there. The first case argued on Monday involved whether a Texas judge violated the rights of David Villarreal under the Constitution's 6th Amendment to have a lawyer assist in his defense in a murder trial. The judge prohibited Villarreal from discussing his testimony with his attorney during an overnight recess in the trial. Villarreal was convicted in 2018 and sentenced to 60 years. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a problem with that. I think that the decision in favor of the state and against Villarreal is probably going to stand up. Because just because you're on an overnight recess doesn't mean you can talk to your attorney. And it's not something that's even surprising when they tell you can't talk in the middle of your testimony to your attorney. Because they're afraid that the attorney is going to hear what you say in the first part of your testimony and use that to help you resculpt your testimony the next morning. So, yeah, I don't think Villarreal is going to win on this one. The second case concerned whether a federal court must apply state laws requiring plaintiffs suing for medical malpractice to obtain an affidavit from medical experts stating that there are reasonable grounds to believe medical negligence has occurred. Numerous states have adopted similar laws to tamp down frivolous medical malpractice lawsuits. So apparently, the second case is a policy that states have come up with, where they say, you file a medical malpractice claim, you have to have at least one expert, medical malpractice expert, who's willing to come forward and say that they're going to testify on your behalf, that there's been malpractice here. If you're a plaintiff here, you've got to have some expert who's come in there and say that there's been malpractice. So the question is, does a federal court have to apply that? That's the state law. Now a case is not in state court, it's in federal court. Does the federal court have to apply the state law? In many regards, when you're talking about a situation like this, they will apply. When you go to federal court, there's two different ways to get into federal court. Let me explain to you what's happening here for those of you who are a little confused. So you can go to federal court for any of two reasons. It can be because there's an issue of federal question, which means the law that you're suing under is a federal statute. So if there's a federal statute, that's supposed to be interpreted by a federal court. Another basis is if there is what they call diversity, not the new interpretation of what diversity means, but if you have plaintiff from state A, defendant from state B, and the amount to be charged, the amount to be claimed is $75,001 or more. Can't be $75,000. It has to be at least $75,001 or more. You can sue the other party in state court, in federal court. It's called diversity. You have to have plaintiff and defendant from different states. Well, when you're looking at, okay, so now if you're suing someone, it's not a matter of federal question. You're suing them based on some state law. So now the question is, you go, what laws are governing here? Usually they tend to go with whatever the state law is. So if you're sitting in the state of New York and you're coming before the Second Circuit, they would go by New York law. So if you have a state law which says, okay, you're filing a medical malpractice case, and now the defendant says, you don't even have an expert who says I did malpractice. I don't want to go through this whole litigation. Well, if they can't come up with an expert who says that there was malpractice, then you can't proceed with your case. The case gets dismissed. That's what the state law says. There's no federal statute that says that, though. So do they have to apply that or not? It actually is a logical law, because if you can't get an expert to come forward and say that there was malpractice, you're not gonna win. So you're really wasting everyone's time, and it's very expensive to fight this in court. The case was filed by a Florida man who alleges he received improper care for an ankle injury in Delaware, where he owns a home. Federal courts can handle cases when a plaintiff and defendant live in different states. In other appeals rejected on Monday, the Supreme Court declined to hear a bid by Sberbank. I said Sberbank, Russia's largest bank, to avoid a lawsuit brought under an American anti-terrorism law alleging that it did business with a group blamed for downing a Malaysian Airlines jetliner over Ukraine in 2014. So they're being sued for because they did business with terrorists, or allegedly. The court also decided not to hear another bid by Turkey's state-owned lender Halkbank to avoid fraud money laundering. So there you go. That's what we have coming up. A whole bunch of tariff cases. I actually think, like I said, the more I look at the tariff situation, the more concerns I have that his tariffs are going to hold up. I have grave concerns that his tariffs are going to hold up in the long term, because there's a lot of deference that's given to the Constitution refers to duties being something that's levied by Congress. Duties and tariffs seem really similar to me. If you ask me to come up with a distinction between duties and tariffs, I might be able to sit there and figure it out, but I wouldn't be able to confidently say that that's not what they were talking about when they referenced duties. And that's specifically Congress jurisdiction. So I don't think it should be Congress's jurisdiction. I think it makes more sense to be the president's jurisdiction, but that's what's in the Constitution. You kind of got to go with what the document says. So I don't know how well his tariffs are going to hold up under legal analysis. And it seemed as if the reason that Trump won that case is because the court was like, why the F are you deciding national policy? Like, who told you you have authority to do that? So even if you're right, it doesn't matter. You don't have the authority to institute some sort of nationwide ban. You're not the freaking president. You're just some district court judge. So that's how Trump won on the emergency basis level. But when they actually start scrutinizing the case and say, hey, does Trump have the authority to do this? I think he's going to struggle. Which is unfortunate, because I really like the tariffs. I think financially, I think economically, they're really beneficial thing. We realize you'll be landing a plane soon. Where can we look up what 2A cases are in front of the Supreme Courts? I can ask Grok for you. Will that help? I'll ask Grok and ChatGPT. Okay, we'll use both. This way. Right there. Cases before the Supreme Court this upcoming term. See what I'm doing for you here. Let's see if we can come up with anything. Take your time. Take your time. Just take your time. Just take your time. All right, I'm gonna be asking Grok. Wow. This is astonishing. All right, well, Grok came back with something. Wolfer v. Lopez. Docket number 24-1046. Petitions are 3 Maui residents with concealed carry permits in the Hawaii Firearms Coalition. Respondents include Hawaii officials. This challenges a 2023 Hawaii law that criminalizes carrying a concealed handgun or private property open to the public, like malls or stores. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's break this down. It criminalizes, this seems to be a complete violation of Braun. Like malls or stores without the owner's explicit permission. It also bans guns in sensitive places such as parks, beaches, playgrounds, and alcohol-serving areas. The law was passed after the court's 2022 decision, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus, I said Braun, but it's Bruin, which invalidated New York's proper cause requirement for concealed carry permits. Does the ban on carrying handguns on private property open to the public violate the Second Amendment? Challengers argue it undermines the right to public carry for self-defense recognized in Bruin. Did the Ninth Circuit err by relying on post-Reconstruction era laws instead of founding era traditions to uphold the sensitive places bans, contrary to the historical analog case from Bruin and United States versus Rahimi? U.S. Court of Appeals and Ninth Circuit upheld these restrictions. Oral arguments are expected later in term. There was a case in Hawaii that came up recently, and I actually read, I couldn't believe how funny and how brazen they were in basically saying, we don't have to follow what the Supreme Court says. It was a Hawaii state court decision. It was by the highest court in Hawaii. And they were like, if we look back historically, we see that under Hawaiian law that was codified in the flaming papoose of Iguanalona, that was codified in long before we were a state. Yeah, you're not allowed to have guns. It's like, what? You're a freaking state. I was like, man, if I was president, I'd send troops to Hawaii and shut down that court. I couldn't even believe it. It was the stupidest thing in the world. They were just like, we don't care. We don't care what United States versus Bruin says. This appears to be the only gun rights case so far, the term that the court could add more. So, Wilford v. Lopez. That's your Second Amendment case there, in case you're wondering, peas and butter. Basically, can you carry a gun in a mall in Hawaii? That's what it comes down to. Can you carry a gun in a mall in Hawaii? All right. That's my show, and I'm sticking to it. The plane is coming down. A reminder, I will not be here tomorrow evening. I will not be here tonight. Oh, wait, I got two more. Pinochet says, how does any of this compact BS punish the guilty? Maybe we shouldn't pine for an irreparable and forever corrupted judicial and education system. Everything comes back in 3 years, but 100 times worse. I don't know if everything comes back in three years. I mean, yeah, it could. First and foremost, you're helping the students who are there now, right? Helping the students who are there. It's not so quick to just change. Also, you think Democrats are going to win in 3 years? So fast? Maybe. Might. You never know. I can tell you this, in 2018, 2019, I never thought for a second that Biden or Democrats would win in 2020. And then we saw what happened. 2020 was the year that the world fell off its axis. So you never know what's going to happen in 2028. But Democrats aren't looking very strong right now. And yeah, if we can start getting a culture in this country that lasts for like 5-6 years, you think there aren't going to be many students who are helped by that? I think that there's students will be helped. Also, Pinochet says, what about when someone's confused and teachers convert them to trans? Is that banned? Oh, please. Of course not. Of course not. It's Colorado. It's Colorado. So, yeah. So, all right. Viola, you're welcome. It's good to see you, Viola. She was thanking me for being here for an afternoon listen. So I'm not going to be here tonight. I'm not going to be here tomorrow night. I do expect to stream late on Wednesday, probably like starting like 11 p.m. Eastern or after. but I'll get up and going as fast as I can. Until then, I'm going to remind you that lamb meat is a violation against the will of God. It's not meant for you. It's for them and them. And do not eat the bugs. Don't do it. Don't eat the bugs. I miss you guys. See you soon. Godspeed.